Right. So, Mr. Clark, thanks for letting me come out today and doing this. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So first of all, I just want to ask, how do you define your band, Brilleaux?
Contemporary British rhythm and blues, I would say. So as opposed to the old-fashioned style of British sort of 60s R&B, which is sort of like rock and roll with harmonica. This is it's the same basic thing, but we've brought it into the 20th century really. So
right.
It's just a bit more rocky. And
so how would you differ your band from other American rhythm and blues bands?
Well, completely different really. We are based on the British genre, and what happened back in the late 1950s, early 1960s, there was American blues in America, but it took a very long time for any of that kind of music to make its way across the Atlantic to England. But when it did, the English kids had never seen anything like it before. So they really loved it. But of course, because they weren't black, and because they weren't American, black American Negroes, they didn't have the feel and the passion to deliver that black American blues, which was written, from experiences in the cotton fields and the chain gangs and the work gangs and sort of thing. But what they still loved the music, so they made their own interpretation of that, which and later it became so popular that they ended up exporting it back across to America, to the Americans, in what became the British beat boom of the 1960s.
Okay. All right. And so has any of the previous or members of Brilleaux at the moment, have they been involved in any other British R&B bands?
No, they hadn't even heard of it until I introduced them to it, really.
Yeah. So have any of the members of your bands, have they been in any other originals band, or what's their history?
Yeah, well, first of all, my drummer Brilleaux, he's been in my band since he was 15 years old. He was still at school when I invited him to come and join my band.
And what band was that?
Beasley Street.
Beasley Street.
Yeah, and because he was still at school, I had to ask his mum's permission if that was okay, and she said that was fine, but I had to promise to look after him and not to do anything that you shouldn't do. So yeah, and he was a great drummer. So Brilleaux joined us back then, and he's been in my band ever since.
Okay. And I'll just ask a question, why do you call him Brilleaux? Where did you get his nickname from?
Brilleaux, that's a bit of a long story. Let me just get that.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
I just got it. Okay, no, that's alright.
Oh.
That's all right. Yep. Okay, why do we call him Brilleaux? Well, what happened was, when he was 14, 15 years old, we had to go out of town for a gig, and his mum didn't want him hanging around unnecessarily with a bunch of much older people, so she said that he had to go and stay at his auntie's house. So anyway, we finished playing our gig, and at 3 o'clock in the morning we were driving home, and we got pulled up by the police, and they said, "Where have you been at this time of the morning?" And we said, "Oh, we're musicians and we've been playing in a band." And they said, "Right, musicians, out of the car." So we all got out of the car and had to put our hands up on the car, and they searched us and looking for drugs and whatever. And they started opening up all our bags, and in the top of one of the bags they found they said, "Oh, what have we got here? You're going to have to come with us down to the station. We've just found a big bag of drugs." And none of us had any drugs. We didn't do drugs, and we were all wondering who it was, and because they opened up the bag and there was a big plastic bag all sort of steamed up and it had sort of green stuff in it, and they thought this was a big bag of drugs. And Brilleaux said, his real name's Ian, he said, "It's Beans, officer." and they all cracked up laughing and said, "Oh, is that what you call it these days? Haha, no, you'll have to come with us." And he said, "No, it's beans." So they took a closer look, because they didn't want to muck up the evidence sort of thing, but they had a closer look, and sure enough, it was a bag of runner beans that his mother had chopped up, and he had to give to his auntie when he got to his...
I see.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's where that story comes from,
Oh,
and it's a
okay.
true story.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah. So tell me about your style of music. So what were your influences, as you said, when you were younger?
Yeah, well, it was...
British R&B?
Yeah, it's British... The British interpretation of black American music. And like I say, they didn't have the feel and the passion, but what they had was a lot of enthusiasm. And so what that did, it created a new style of music, which became sort of rock and roll. And it's really rock and roll with harmonica. It's really what our style of music
Okay,
is.
so who were some musicians that influenced you?
Well, in the early days, there were lots of them. There was Manfred Mann,
Okay.
whose singer later became, whose singer's name was Paul Jones, and he later had a band called the Blues Band, which they were very popular and still going today. And he's an amazing harmonica player. Paul Jones, then the early Rolling Stones, the early Beatles, the Yardbirds, which had Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page as their guitar players, John Mayall, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks. So has Brilleaux played any other style of music in the past, or is it only British R&B?
It's just our own interpretation of that British R&B.
So enough of that. We'll start with your gigs part of festival, kind of start with it. So what would you say was your biggest or your favourite gig?
Oh, we've played some. Well, Brilleaux were formed in 1999, so we've been going for some time now. We've had lots of amazing gigs. So it's pretty hard to remember, but a memorable one would have been recently on the Isle of Wight in the UK.
Okay.
At a festival there.
Right.
I mean, that was a pretty hard one to beat.
Yeah. Could you tell us the size of the crowd, or how many people you were watching?
1,000. It was only about 1,000 people there, but it was a blues festival, so.
Well, so were you the main attraction?
No, there were a number of bands there.
Okay.
We were just another
just one
band.
of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did Brilleaux start off in the early days? Like, where did you get your members from, and all
well,
that?
I wanted to find people who would be able to play the sort of music that I wanted to play, because nobody else in New Zealand was doing it. I already had Beano as my drummer. Somebody recommended a bass player called Brian Franks, and they said he was a really freaky guy. He played a really unusual style, and it sounded interesting to me, so I checked him out, and I invited Brian to come and have a jam, and I liked what he did, so Brian joined. We had another guitar player, the original guitarist, whose name was Kevin Nankivell, but after about 18 months he left to go overseas, and I had to find a replacement, and the replacement that I got was Bruce Rowlands. In fact, Bruce was an old friend of mine who had been in lots of original bands around here in Auckland, and he actually told me he was joining, so I didn't say no. I thought we'd give it a try, and Bruce has been the guitarist ever since.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. So why did you choose the musicians you played with? Was it because that previous experience, or they liked the music that you did?
Well, the most important part of a band, if you play in a band, you realise that the rhythm section is the most important thing, because if you have a tight rhythm section and they do their job, which is to play and hold the rhythm and the groove, then a singer and a lead guitarist can do anything at any time, anywhere, or not. They can do anything they want, because the song keeps going with the rhythm section.
Yeah.
So as long as they keep doing their job, then everything's fine. And so it was important that I had a really good rhythm section. Bino is one of the best in the country as far as I'm concerned. That's why he's been my guitarist, my drummer for all these years.
Okay, thanks. And so you mentioned that you changed your guitar player 18 months in. Did you change any other members?
No, it's the same lineup since then.
Right.
Only the guitar player changed.
So you've got quite a few records now. You've got 7, is that 8 upcoming? Or
Yeah, well,
7?
7, but we're in the studio at the moment recording our 8th album. Yeah.
And what would you say is your most successful record out of the 7?
It has to go on popularity really, and we seem to sell. A couple of our albums have been more successful than others. Decade, which was our last studio album, that's been pretty popular, and also a live album that we recorded has always also been very popular.
Was that recorded in your?
It was it was recorded live at a show at the Masonic in Auckland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they had a mobile studio there.
Oh, okay.
And we weren't going to actually release it, but after we heard it, it was so good that we couldn't say no really.
And so you say that Brilleaux's got the 8th you're recording at the moment. Do you have any? Are you still making your songs, or do you have records to come after that?
Oh no, we're still writing.
Yep.
Still, this is there are 9 original. Well, there's 10 original tracks on this new album, and we may put a couple of covers on there, or we may write a couple of new ones to finish it off. But I'm quite interested in putting a couple of covers on there.
Yeah. So they'll be from Dr. Feelgood or something like that?
No, they'll be just. Whatever sits right with the band, really.
Yeah.
We don't play mainstream.
Yeah, of course.
Songs by other bands, but there's probably some old blues classic that we may revive from somewhere and give it a contemporary sort of treatment.
Yeah. So do you have any gigs coming up or festivals?
Oh, we've got a little festival in town on this Friday.
Was that the jazz?
No, it's a blues festival. Along the Strand. They're closing off Masonic Park, and there are 2 bands in there. It starts at 5 o'clock and goes through to about 10.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
so
good. But then we've got quite a number of other gigs lined up around the place.
Okay. Yeah. Are you excited for a particular one, or is it?
No, always.
Just whenever you want.
Yeah, we enjoy playing whenever we get the opportunity, really, and everyone, we treat it like, doesn't matter whether it's a big one or a small one, we treat them the same.
Yeah. So have you been practicing together? How often for these gigs?
No, well, we've actually got a rehearsal tonight.
I see.
And for this gig on the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've been playing for so long now that we've got, we just run over our new ones, just to make sure we've got those nice and tight.
Cool. Yep. So how do you think, apart from all the gigs and especially the ones overseas though, how do you think Brilleaux fits into the New Zealand music scene?
It's quite difficult to say, really. It's difficult to say without sounding like you're blowing your own trumpet, if you know what I mean. But everywhere we play, we surprise the hell out of people.
Yeah.
They're not expecting the kind of and quality of show that we deliver, and ever since we started, that has been the case.
Yeah.
But to make any great success of it, you've got to be. It's not what you know; it's who you know, and you've got to kiss the right bums.
Yeah, yeah. So
we're not good at kissing bums, so we don't. I guess we're not that successful for that reason.
Well, I know you're pretty big in the Tauranga music scene around here. Everyone will know who you are. But say, if you went up Auckland, would you?
Yeah, definitely. Auckland, There are a number of places where we have really good following and quite popular. Auckland, Bay of Islands, Nelson, Wellington, Gisborne, and where was it? Wanganui.
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
Has the band hasn't received any special awards or anything like that by
No.
music associations?
No.
And you say you're not. You said you're not funded by New Zealand On Air. So
That's
you
right. Yeah.
do that by yourself.
We do. We fund all of our releases, and I'm very passionate about that, and I think it's very important too.
Yeah. Why do you do that instead of go with New Zealand On Air?
Well, again, that's a bit of a long story, but what? How do I explain it? You can artificially inflate a band's worth or their popularity with lots of money. So if you give a band, if I gave a band, any old band, a huge amount of money and say, here you are, go and do something with this, record a CD or a video or something, okay, that will instantly put them up on a pedestal. They haven't earned that money, they haven't played out to lots of people and learnt lots of lessons and learnt and paid their dues. They've just been given lots of money.
Yeah.
Whereas another band who doesn't take that money or who isn't offered that money works very hard to earn every cent that they get so that they can afford to make a CD or something.
Yeah.
So okay, and their popularity is gained through how good they are and the quality of their shows. People see them and go, wow, they're really good, and they just keep playing and people like their show and they build their popularity. But this band that have just been given lots of money to make a big CD or video, once that money is gone, they fall straight back down to the level that they have achieved prior to that.
Yeah, I understand. Alright.
Yeah. It's quite a difficult thing to explain. People think taking government money to pay for things is good, and I think it is really bad.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't accept government funding for
Okay, that's cool. Do you think any of the gigs overseas or anywhere in New Zealand, do you think you've represented New Zealand itself as Brilleaux, one of New
yes.
Zealand's bands?
When we went overseas, we pretty much represented New Zealand and gave and showed them what we had done with their music. So we're playing British rhythm and blues, made in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And we took it to we took it to England, and they were really surprised, and they really loved it because we had given it a new edge.
Yeah. And so would you say that Brilleaux has any milestones over the past few years or so that you've...
Oh, there's lots of milestones. The UK tour was a milestone. Each new album is a milestone. We're constantly looking for ways to do more and better, and get better events and better shows. So yeah, there've been lots of milestones.
Okay, cool, thanks. And so tell me about your own musical achievements and milestones, like yourself, Graham Clark.
Well, I came from nothing. I didn't even know that I could sing. I couldn't play any instruments, and I was 25 years old when I first picked up a microphone and sort of had a go at singing, and the people that I was singing with said that I could sing in tune, and it sounded good. So that's how I started.
Okay.
And I started playing, and then I got into a band, And then one day one of the guys gave us a song to learn and it had harmonica in it. And I said, oh, we can't do that, we haven't got a harmonica. And then I thought, oh, hold on, it doesn't sound that difficult, I reckon I could learn that. So I found out how to play the harmonica, what harmonica I needed, and I bought it and I went and practiced and I learnt that song. And then, because it was easy, so then we did another one with harmonica in. And I found I could learn that too. So, and I started doing more and more and more and more complicated things. And then eventually I got into a band that was pretty much just harmonica driven.
And what band was it?
They were called the Fabulous Thunderbirds,
okay.
which is
Yep.
Stevie Ray Vaughan's brother.
Yeah, yeah.
And the whole band is based pretty much around how good their harmonica player is. And so that was a real learning curve. I really had to get much better if I had to try and play those songs, and that just improved my playing.
So what was the name of the band that you played in?
And that band was called the Sensational Gutter Brothers.
And that was covers band, was it?
Yeah, it was just covers, but we just played this American rhythm and blues.
Yeah. Would you say that playing on stage with Dr. Feelgood and Brilleaux himself, would you say that was one of your biggest achievements in your musical career? Or?
Absolute buzz. Something I'll never forget. I mean, I don't know who your musical heroes are, but you just imagine being invited up onto the stage with your musical hero, whether it's Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton or, I don't know, John Lord or whoever it may be. Imagine him say, come up here, Jason, and play a couple of songs with us.
Yeah.
That's just, mine just happened to be Lee Brilleaux, and I was very lucky to get that opportunity. Yeah. And the first time was actually in Tauranga.
Yeah, down at the Trust.
At the Tomato Trust, yeah.
And you did it twice, once in Hamilton, was that right?
Yeah, I did it in Hamilton as well. I didn't, because I'd introduced myself to them, I didn't want to appear to be like a stalker or something, so I just stood back in the crowd and I watched, from about 20 back in the, in the mosh pit sort of thing. I just stood back there, and near the end, Lee said, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a special guest who's going to join us, and he couldn't remember my name, but he pointed out to the crowd and went like this and waved to me, and I sort of turned round to look to see who he was waving at, but it was me.
Yeah.
And so I sort of got through to the front and I climbed up on the stage, and I think I did about 3 songs with them. So
that's
that
amazing,
was. That
so
really,
he didn't remember your face, just.
Yeah, he remembered.
That's
face.
cool.
Yeah.
That was a few weeks apart from that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks apart.
Yeah. How old were you when that happened?
28.
Okay, so just after you started playing.
30, yeah.
Yeah. And you were a self-taught harmonica player, were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just played by ear.
Yeah, and so I've been reading a little bit of research you did, and you referred to yourself as a libertarian musician. Is that right?
Yeah, that I may have at some stage. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me what that means?
Well, what that means is, I don't believe. I touched on it previously when I spoke about the funding.
Yep.
I don't believe that it is right to take money from people by force.
Yep.
The government to take money from people by force and then give it out to other people who they think deserve it.
Okay.
I think that's detrimental. I think that if you work hard and you earn your money, you should be able to spend it yourself on things that you value. So you'll have to look up the term libertarian if you want.
Yep.
But there wouldn't be very many libertarian musicians in New Zealand.
All right. Well, thanks for the interview, Graham.
You're welcome. I hope it's been. I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah. Oh, thanks very much. I really
welcome.
appreciate it.
No,
Cheers.
thanks.
Good luck.
Cool.